Welcome to tonight's live town hall with Mayor Patrick Brown. Your host is Michael A. Charbon.
Good evening, Brampton. How are you? And welcome to Live Town Hall. Boy, John McLeod, welcome to the background. Welcome to Live Town Hall. This is your opportunity to speak to the Mayor of Brampton, Mr. Patrick Brown. You can contact us at citystudio.ca/Ask Brown. That's citystudio.ca/Ask Brown. You can post your questions on Facebook and on YouTube and have an opportunity to interact with those who you have elected. And the person and the man of the hour on every last Tuesday of the month is Mr. Mayor Patrick Brown. Let's bring the mayor in. Mr. Brown, Mr. Mayor, how are you, sir?
Very good. I want to know if that background music was an awkward Don McLeod laugh or if it was a Halloween theme.
Yes, it was a Halloween-themed awkward Don McLeod laugh. That's the way I would categorize it. Welcome. Halloween's here. Halloween's here. This is why I'm wearing the orange. You've got young kids. This must be a wonderful time. I remember when my kids were young, I used to parent go out with a couple of parents. We would have a beverage or so. We would have pork and beans, and we would torment the children and walk around with sleeping bags and pillowcases. Give us a little bit of what you've got in store to tour Brampton with your kids this Halloween.
Well, Theodore is 2 and 3 months now. Savannah's 6 months, so Savannah's still too young to realize.
Yeah, but your wife dresses them up. Come on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Theodore's got dressed up each year, but I think this year will be the first year that he'll actually be able to appreciate Halloween. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not sure my wife will let him eat the candy that he collects, but we are going to go trick-or-treating. We actually went to a Halloween party last Sunday as a family, and he dressed as a cow. He's a big fan of cows right now. He can say moo moo, and he looks pretty cute in his cow outfit. So
it's such a great time of the year, Thanksgiving and Halloween. Another one is Easter too. Anyways, I just want to first of all welcome you to the show. Thank you very much. This is, I believe, our 6th show. We've been doing this for 6 months at the last Tuesday of every month, and you've always been very candid. Just for all our viewers out there, Mayor Brown, you and I have not talked. You have no idea what my questions are. We haven't conversed about what we're going to talk about, and I just want to confirm that with you.
We have not spoke. You have not paid attention to me in the last month.
Well, last month we saw the naming of Madam Mayor's Susan Fennell's new place, so we did have a little bit of a chat. But this month has been busy, so let's get right down to the nitty gritty. Let's go right into the heart of things here. Peel Memorial tax levy. As you know, it was proposed by Pat Fortini, and it was seconded by yourself. And what my understanding was that in phase 1, Peel Memorial City and the city, for Peel Memorial, the city covered about 20 to 25% of the cost. And basically, it was done in a form of a tax levy. And my understanding was that levy was to collect about $60 million from the taxpayers of Brampton. $40 million was to be used for phase 1, and $20 million was to be used for phase 2. So if we were to have $20 million for phase 2, why put the levy in to raise 60?
So the provincial government, as part of a hospital build, requires a local share. Now we're going to negotiate with the hospital what percentage that local share is, but there is a standard formula that has been utilized in other communities, and it's one of the contingencies. It's one of the requirements if you want to trigger that provincial funding. Now we've got $1 billion in a provincial tender that's been issued. We need the hospital, frankly, not just immediately. We could have used it 20 years ago. And so we're going to step up as a community. We're going to make sure that we contribute our local share to that build. The hospital is going to be before City Council November 3rd to articulate what they believe the local share needs to be. Now, that local share can be contributed to through community fundraising, but usually the largest contribution comes from a contribution from the local and regional governments. And so I'm looking forward to the hospital presentation on November 3rd. I believe we should step up to make sure we get this hospital built. And I can't wait to see construction get started soon. And I should add that this hospital is much more ambitious than it's ever been in the original plans that were articulated to the public before. We're looking at about 250 beds, a full service emergency department. So it's a much more ambitious than it was before. We
So
pushed
it's a
them to
grade
make
A
it more
hospital
ambitious.
without mincing words here. Brampton's getting a grade A hospital.
We are.
And so there's a question here on the bottom. It says, is the local share 125 million? Is that what is the city's share of that?
So it's going to be significantly north of the 60 million that you suggested. Obviously, there's been construction escalation costs, and so we are going to have to bring in a health levy. It'll be up to council to vote on that. But it's been something that has been typical in other communities where they're building a hospital. And I think there's nothing more important for a community than a hospital, than having quality healthcare. But in terms of what the actual number is, there's the dream number that the hospital will be asking for, but obviously we're going to need to do our due diligence for taxpayers and make sure that it is consistent with the community participation and percentage that we've seen in other communities. And so you look at what the contribution was in the Oakville build, the Vaughan build, the Windsor one right now, and those are all comparables. And so the local and regional contribution will be part of what is required. And I don't want to presume what's going to be in the hospital presentation, but I would say generally that I believe it's our responsibility to step up. You can have everything in a community, but if you don't have your health care, then it's all for naught.
And that was a contentious election issue anyway, and that's something that many people have been talking about. When Brampton Civic was put together, there was extreme pressure on the community, Bramptonians, to supply funds for laser machines and x-rays and MRIs and all the rest of that. Is that same ask going to be made of the people of Brampton to furnish much of the interior of the hospital? And if that ask does happen, does that reduce potentially what the levy would cost because through fundraising and through doing those things, or is that a separate piece all on its own?
Yeah, that's a separate piece. The way hospital financing happens in Ontario, the provincial government expects the community to fundraise for the equipment inside the hospital. And so that's on top of the contribution we're making for the bricks and mortar of the building. So it's a huge, a hospital commitment is a huge commitment for the provincial government, because obviously it's the largest line item healthcare is in the provincial budget, but it's an extraordinary contribution of a municipality too. And it's not something that you can collect in development charges. It comes on the backs of property taxpayers. And so it's a significant contribution. But like I said, it's critical.
Just wanted to comment. We just saw a comment from Rowena Santos, Councillor Santos, and Councillor Paul Vicente. I don't know if anybody saw their picture on Facebook. They were dressed as the Addams Family. And I got to tell you, Paul, you've lost a lot of weight. You look good there, guy. Anyways, it's always good
I have to say, on that note, we got some great Halloween activities in the city, and Councillor Santos and Councillor Vicente go above and beyond in terms of being active and engaged in the community. And they're just great public servants. I want to thank them for always being involved in every community activity. But the Halloween activities, we got a costume contest where there's great local prizes available. There's going to be the annual pumpkin smashing, and we've got, of course, got a number of themed Halloween events across the city. You can go to brampton.ca to see the full list. But last year we had a panel of community judges looking at the Halloween costumes. It was a lot of fun. So please, join us and celebrate Halloween with your community.
When you're talking about councillors and people being in the public eye, I want to give you a compliment, Mayor Brown. I see you all the time on CP24. I see you out there. In many instances, it's funny when we get to election season, everybody all of a sudden starts to propagate social media. Santos and Vicente, yourself, and a couple of others have been very consistent in being in social media and addressing the people straight on. And I really think that has been a very great improvement of now the councillors, because in some of the councillors in years past, which I've had the privilege of dealing with, social media was never their acumen, nor did they want to. Because they had to deal with hard questions. And again, I compliment you for coming every Tuesday at the end of every month, because you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, and you answer the questions straight ahead, because this is live and it's archived. you know, you say what you do. So that's just a personal observation. And I think that's really important because Brampton needs to get their dues. And you're doing a great job of getting your face on television and representing Brampton. So I compliment you on that. Local Health Integration Network, it's called LIHN funding. So my understanding was that in 2020, Brampton got about $850 per person in provincial funding. It's been stated that a lot of other cities and other provinces got like 900 and way more. Here we are with Brampton, the ninth largest city in Canada and growing, and probably will escalate to the 8th largest city soon enough. How do we square that with other municipalities getting 1,900 and we're getting 850, and you know, the integrated health network and funding all the raft of things that it does is such a needy piece. How do we square that? Where do we go from here with regards to that?
Well, obviously, the building of a new hospital and the funding of new healthcare staff in Brampton is going to dramatically change the numbers in terms of the average healthcare spend in Brampton. That's going to be a huge boost to healthcare spending. But, you know, I'll say this is one of the reasons that we declared a healthcare crisis before COVID. A lot of people might have forgotten this, but our council declared an emergency. And normally you declare a public emergency when it's a natural disaster, a tornado, or some extreme weather event. But we declared an emergency on the basis that our healthcare was inequitable. And part of the reason for that is I wanted to drive attention, media attention, to the inequities that existed, that we had two-tier healthcare in Canada. You had one standard of care in Brampton and one standard of care in other communities. Yep. And we were part of the media cycle. And so the fact that the Premier and the Health Minister got scrummed about our motion, got scrummed about our petition, shows that we are breaking through what is a very difficult media market at Queen's Park to pierce into. And it got to the point the Premier said to me and our council, you know, don't worry, you're going to get your hospital. Just, you know, essentially stop harassing me.
Good for you.
He has kept his word. We had an announcement at the former Peel Memorial site. It was included in the provincial budget. And for me, the most significant part is they actually issued the tender. The fact that we've got a tender for $1 billion, that's billion with a B. That's a huge investment in our community. And I think the genesis of this was the fact that all of us in the community stood up and said, we're sick of it. And we expected better. And we made it our number one issue.
Let's go on to another one. The Qriket Stadium. It's a $35 million build. It's a multi-use facility. We say the cricket facility, but that's one thing that it does. The question is there going to be a dome over top of it or not? Obviously, if there's a dome put on, that could potentially raise the cost, or is that included in the 35 mil? And when we talk about a domed scenario, I mean, we're talking about indoor soccer, indoor lacrosse. There's a bunch of other things that can happen, considering that we're living in Canada and Brampton gets as much snow sometimes as Ottawa. Where do we stand with the potentially having that proposed cricket field having a dome on it?
So there's no plans right now for a dome. That would obviously be a price escalation. Yep. But the cricket season is a lengthy season. It can go from sort of April 1st until November. So you get a majority of the year outdoors in which you can play cricket. But just like we have outdoor baseball fields and tennis courts and soccer fields, we do want to have great outdoor amenities. And the pitch that I've been making is that we need to play some catch up and invest more in cricket. This is not the Brampton of 1960. It's Brampton 2021. And the longest wait list in our recreation department for usage is cricket. You know, we have 140 plus teams on the wait list to find time to play cricket. And I want to make sure we have the best recreational amenities in the country in Brampton. I want to make it easy for people to be active. And this sort of goes back to the healthcare question. One of the largest costs on the healthcare system is the rising rates of obesity and cardiac issues. And one of the ways you can combat that is by having a more active society. Obviously, there are issues that relate to diet, but one thing that can be used to combat cardiac issues and rising rates of obesity is to encourage our citizens to be more active. And I think sports and recreation are a great way to enable that.
Yeah. We haven't seen any plans. Are we going to see some plans? Are we going to see some drawings? Are we going to have like an announcement and someone's going to show us what it potentially can look like?
So, city staff have made some presentations in camera to city council. Obviously, when there are issues that relate to location and land, that there's some sensitivity around that requires discussions in camera. But I would say that we are hoping to have this approved at our budget time to go ahead with some drawings, to go ahead with the process of building a multi-purpose facility. And I would say we've just approved recently a multi-purpose facility at Vic Park. That's a $28 million facility that we primarily use for lacrosse, but also ball hockey. We just approved a new ice rink at Chris Gibson. That new multi-purpose facility should run us about $30 million. And so my ask of council is that the type of investments we're making in hockey and lacrosse and other sports, that we should also be willing to make that type of commitment to cricket, recognizing the incredible interest there is in our city.
Yeah, I add to that as a live television producer, I know that there are very few facilities for live cricket. Cricket's a long game, but we have an embedded audience in Brampton. There is great fans, great players, and there is an opportunity to entertain international teams that would come to Brampton just because of the ties that our community has. And that's one thing that I think Brampton can make a name for it. So that's my 2 cents.
And Michael, I would just add to that. I'm a hockey fan, or addict almost sometimes.
Yes.
I love hockey, but I understand my responsibility is to everyone in this city, and it's not to focus on the sports that I love; it's to focus on the sports that our residents love. And I do think we have ample recreational resources for ice hockey. If you want to get ice time, you can find ice time, which is great for those that enjoy recreational hockey like myself. But we don't have those same resources in cricket. And just to give you a sense of the explosive growth of cricket, they just had the India-Pakistan match on Sunday, and the TV viewership worldwide was 1 billion. 1 billion. And it just shows the extraordinary level of interest internationally in cricket. When we had the GT20 in Brampton, a number of the games had a viewership of 130 million. And so we were getting emails from around the world saying they were watching the cricket matches in Brampton, which was neat. I think there's an opportunity for some tourism and economic development associated with the opportunities in cricket.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just wanted to add to your comment about getting people out and getting more exercise. The Boys and Girls Club of Peel is always in need of people to help. I've been privy to volunteer time to help Michael Jovi and his team. They're always looking for people to help and interact with our youth. And there's lots of things that we can do. And particularly now when it's getting a little cold, there's lots of people who are experiencing a little more strife as we're coming out of this COVID-ness. So I encourage everybody to look up the Boys and Girls Club of Peel and avail yourselves and get out and do something with that. You help your community, you build strong minds, young bodies, and give people a bit of a leg up who they're not looking for it, but they can use the help. And I would encourage everybody to do that. They do great work, and that's always something that I think everybody should keep in the back of their mind. A little promo there. November 11th, Remembrance Day. My father-in-law was a Spitfire pilot in World War II. He was shot down 3 times, once in the Red Sea, twice in the English Channel. So I have very much akin to Remembrance Day. Every Remembrance Day, I take the poppy that I wore and I put it on his picture. Brampton's always had a great tradition for celebrating Remembrance Day. Great celebrations, great ceremony, etc. What do you have planned on Remembrance Day?
Well, I'm going to jump ahead of my announcement tomorrow and tell you right now. I've been giving a lot of thought to outdoor events. And when I heard the news about the Santa Claus parade being canceled, and there was a number of reasons behind that. It's not as simple as the public health protocols. It was difficult for them to put it together on short notice. But I really started thinking about our outdoor events. And, we've asked the public to step up and get vaccinated, and things will get back to normal. And for me, I struggle with the fact that our community has done that. They've stepped up. They've got vaccinated in numbers that exceeded the original forecast. And we're going to keep on going and make sure that as many people protect themselves as possible. But I struggle with the fact that everyone's made that sacrifice, listened to public health, and yet we still had key civic events that weren't happening. And so I spoke to public health and I said, do you have concerns about outdoor events given the environment we're in with a highly vaccinated population? And they said no, as long as public health protocols, masking and distancing where possible is abided by. And so we had a meeting with Councillor Medeiros, who's the chair of the Reopening Task Force, and key city staff members about the upcoming events. And Councillor Medeiros and myself asked the team to prepare for the return of public events. And if we can have 20,000 people at a Maple Leafs game or a Raptors game indoors, I can't justify us not organizing these events that are important to our community. And so we are going to have an in-person Remembrance Day. It's no longer going to be virtual. It'll be recorded if you want to watch it on a live stream, but we are going to have an in-person Remembrance Day to pay tribute to our veterans. And there's going to be an area that's fenced in for our veterans to sort of be safe and away from crowds, but we're finding safe ways to return to safe outdoor events. And I think that's the least we can do, given the fact that the public has worked so collaboratively with the advice of public health.
Just to come back to the Santa Claus Parade, I mean, the Brampton Santa Claus Parade has been a tradition that's been for many, many, many years. Sometimes 75,000 people on the streets of Brampton watch us. One of the only nighttime parades. It's always wonderful to watch. It's a celebration at night, which is very unique, and it really is a wonderful gem of what Brampton represents. The problem was that you have sometimes, as I said, could be potentially 75,000 people. There's no way that anybody could verify vaccinations. There's no way that anybody could be able to in any way discipline social distancing. It's a parade. And the most important thing, I think, is that the Rotary Club, of course, is a huge driver of this. It's a completely volunteer organization. I mean, these people put this on. Last year, they did it virtually because they had to do it. This year, they're going to do it virtually again. I think it's November 27th at 5 p.m. is when they're going to do the parade. One of the biggest problems that they had is many of the organizations, which are community-based and volunteer-based, were not able to get together to make the floats. Now, no one wants to put on a half show. The Brampton Santa Claus Parade is something that I think many people cherish. I've had the privilege to work on it when Councillor Vicente a long time ago was just Paul Vicente. Went past one of his business locations. So I just want to say to people that from what I understand from the press release that was given, it's not that they didn't want to do it. It was because they had to make a decision. And if you figure the thousands of hours of volunteer hours to put floats together, costumes together, which is all volunteer based, one couldn't get to that point, and particularly with the COVID restriction on it. I know the city participates, I mean, the fire department, the police department, and so many other valuable participants. So I don't think in any way that it was a pleasant decision for the Santa Claus Parade Committee. But again, they've come through, from what I understand, with a virtual presentation like they did last year.
So I would add a lot of some of the very small Santa Claus parades in smaller communities are still able to be on, but if you look at the big cities, those parades are generally canceled.
Toronto's going virtual too, Mayor Brown. Toronto's going virtual too. So it's not as if Brampton's trying to be an exception. I think the one thing that, it's that old thing. If you can't maintain the level of quality and the wonderfulness that you did when you could, when 75,000 people and we were not in a COVID situation, why would you take a step down? And again, it's the volunteer time which is so crucial. So I just wanted to make that point because I know there was many people who were upset at the fact, but it's not in any way due to any negligence from the people who are involved with that. So Koala Kara is now an MP, and my understanding is that she's going to be the Kamal Kara. I'm sorry, that she's going to be the MP for the seniors ministry. Being a resident of Brampton, was there anything in there for Brampton with regards to seniors that we think we could pull a trigger on? Because I know when we spoke before the election, your team put together a really great list of things that Brampton was asking of our potential MPs and having them run and try to solicit their vote. Kamala Harris is one. Has there anything that has developed because of any MPs who have gotten in?
So, first of all, I was in Ottawa, I guess a week and a half ago now, and I met with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Dominic LeBlanc. And the Prime Minister told me he's looking forward to working with us on our 5 asks that we outlined during the federal election. And so he's certainly engaged in the file, and we hope to move that forward with his new government. In terms of a cabinet perspective, there are some positive signs for Brampton. I would say the Minister of Transport is Omar Agaraba, who is a Mississauga MP. He understands our issues well, being so close by, and he's someone that I consider a friend and I talk to often. So I think he'll be easy to work with on some of our transport projects. In terms of MP Kamal Kara being elevated to cabinet, that's great news for Brampton. We haven't had a voice in the federal cabinet, and now we do. She has been a diligent, determined, hardworking MP, and I have high hopes that she'll be able to push a number of our projects in Ottawa. And I'll just add some commentary about her. I know there was one local blog that was critical of her, but I have to say I have found her to be incredibly collaborative, and she really stepped up during COVID. Her background is as a nurse, and when she wasn't in Ottawa for her MP duties, she was volunteering doing vaccinations. And for me, I was really impressed by that level of commitment, looking at any way to help out. And so the fact that she has an opportunity to serve Canada and focus on seniors is good news for Canada, but it's also good news for our city to have someone who's going to be at that table.
I apologize to Kamal Kara. I pronounced her name incorrectly. Let's talk a little bit about the federal election results. Again, another landslide. Many of the things that Brampton was asking for and looking for from funding, $850 million for the light LRT, the Queen Street Rapid Transit, we're looking for Zoom and $250 million. The Cyber Catalyst grant was another thing, very important, $80 million for that. Expanding the active transit, which is $42.2 million. There's a lot of money that Brampton is looking for to take it up a notch that it deserves. How do you say this in a nice way? You're standing in line like many other mayors, like many other people who are asking for the grace of the goodness of the federal government. Is it of any interest to hold a Brampton meeting with all the elected MPs, the federal MPs, and kind of have a little cocktail swoosh and kind of see if we can do a little schmooze?
So we speak regularly. We speak regularly with our MPs. I'm in contact on a weekly basis with them, and we're going to lobby the government of Canada together. Our 5 MPs have been easy to work with, and we're going to be, as I say, Team Brampton, pushing for federal investment in our city. And I've already spoken to our local MPs about how we're going to push our 5 asks in Ottawa, and they've got some great ideas. And so, we're going to need some provincial contributions, federal contributions to the variety of projects we have on the go. But I believe we have a collaborative relationship right now with our elected officials where we're all steering in the same direction.
That wasn't a comment saying you weren't doing your job or talking to them. I absolutely believe that you talk to them on a weekly basis.
Sometimes there's
it's like herding cats, though. No, federal ministers are like herding cats.
I know, but I know it's a competition for dollars. Yeah. But I think one thing we have going for ourselves is sometimes you've got three levels of government all pushing different projects, and not necessarily agreeing on what the asks are. And I think one of the advantages we have in Brampton right now is there's an alignment on a number of the key issues. And so when there's an alignment, it makes it easier to make that pitch. You know, the government of Canada has ambitious plans on climate change. If they want to meet their climate change goals, they need to work with Canada's big cities to do so. And the projects that we've proposed, whether it's the electrification of the new transit facility, the rapid bus transit on Queen, the extension of the LRT, all those projects will help the government realize its climate change ambitions. And so, you know, I feel that when I am pitching these ideas in Ottawa, there's a very receptive audience, and that helps. And when the MPs are helping us make that pitch, that's helpful. You know, there's no people going in different directions right now on what the city needs. And I think one of the challenges of the city faced in the past, if you look at, you know, go back in time 4 or 5 years ago, you know, you had half of council wanting one thing, half of council wanting another thing on transit. You had MPs and MPPs taking different positions. And so if you're a premier or a prime minister and you go in to hear the pitch and it's a different pitch, that's not good for a community. I actually remember being the opposition leader and hearing 2 different delegations from Brampton pitch opposite requests for the city. And so the response that people have in political leadership to that is they don't have their act, they don't have their act together. And so I think right now we have our act together. We have a transit master plan that has been ratified by council by 11-0. You know, we're speaking from one page, and we got the MPPs and the MPs working with us, as we call it, Team Brampton. So I think we're well positioned to make our pitch.
Yeah, not only are you well positioned, you've got an educated, youthful population. You've got a large workforce. You're now connected. You've got a university coming, and you have land for expansion, and you have much development potential in the city core, which is one of the things that you want to do. But that trigger hasn't been pulled yet, so there's lots of potential for people, investment, condominiums, and buildings. So I think Brampton is very well placed to do that, and I think, or I would hope that the federal government would recognize that. Let's go to some questions. We had some questions, and we appreciate your questions. You can always go to citystudio.ca/askbrown. That's citystudio.ca/askbrown. Let's go to our first question. And all right. Here we go. When it comes to the local planning, how would you gauge your prosperity to include public consultation as a propensity to include public consultation as a part of the process? How would you explain asking the Premier to hand out yet another minister's zoning order with reference to a huge new development known as Emerald Heights that would see 12,500 residents move into someone's backyard? Well, it sounds like somebody who lives near Emerald Heights. The Emerald Heights scenario, what would be your comment on that, Mayor Brown?
So our city council has unanimously put forward some MZO's request to the province for their consideration. And, you know, the fact that everyone in council supported these requests, that in itself speaks volumes that these are opportunities to help with our supply crisis. You know, there is a lack of homes in our community. So you have a number of people competing for very few homes, and so you have bidding wars. You have just a lack of affordable homes available, and so by creating more supply, it will help with those challenges. And both the Premier and the Prime Minister have spoken recently about the need to create more supply, particularly in the areas that we're seeing significant growth, like the Bramptons and the large urban areas in our country. One of the benefits of the MZOs is it expedites that planning process. There's still opportunities for public input and public consultation, but it expedites what can be a very arduous and slow process, especially when there is planning applications that involve regional approvals, local approvals, provincial approvals. And so this really fast tracks it. And some of the projects that the city of Brampton put forward, whether it's for long-term care, places of worship, whether it is creating transit-oriented development, will be in the best interest of our city.
Yeah, I think the salient point, though, from the question was 12,500 people moving into one area. how do we square that? Is that we're looking at density? I mean, as soon as you put 12,500 people, that implies that you have to be considering more roads, more traffic lights, more servicing, etc. That's a complicated build. How does someone who says you're putting 12,500 people in my backyard? How do we answer that question?
So when you're talking about a city the size of Brampton, when you're having a city that could be approaching 800,000, and you're talking about growth forecasts for developments that could take 10 years to build, it's a small percentage of the city, and it's over a large geographical area. And we're talking about mixed use developments that will have employment, that will have local amenities. And of course, the city is going to require, as we are mandated to do provincially, development charges, where we will collect funds from these developments to pay for those local amenities.
So the question on here is public input. How does the public have the ability to put their input and reflect on that kind of a development, that kind of an influx of new people and development?
Well, they're welcome to come to City Hall to share their input. They're welcome to share their input with the provincial government as they consider them. We have 5 MPPs that are in the provincial legislature. If you want to share your input with them, I'm sure they would welcome that input. Mm-hmm. We have 2 city councillors that put forward that particular MZO request. They were elected by their residents, and they felt that this project would be beneficial to the Bramalea area, that would create economic activity, that would create employment, would create housing,
increase tax base,
the housing supply. And Councillor Fertini and Councillor Williams, they do their due diligence, and right. They were very impressed with this proposal, and I have a lot of confidence in our local councillors.
Let's go to another question. We'll pop up another one. Again, thank you, everybody, for putting your questions in. Brampton is changing so much that I do not feel safe anymore. My neighbor's Jeep got stolen last night. It's desperate times for some people. I mean, I talked about the Boys and Girls Club of Peel. I mean, there's a lot of people in need. There's some people who have realized that they don't have a place to live. Crime. How do you answer that question to someone who has seen an escalation in crime in Brampton?
So first of all, I'd say I remember a year ago we had a debate over defunding police, and I said that would not be realistic in Peel Region. I faced some criticism over that, but I said at the time that we didn't have enough police officers to respond to the calls that we were getting. They have to prioritize calls, and so they will go to a gun and gang issue, a domestic violence issue, before they will attend to a car theft or a break and entry where the person is the alleged criminal isn't there. And so I understand that we need to invest in policing to make sure we can have faster response times, and there are corners of our city where the response times, in my opinion, are not adequate. It's why in each of the last 3 years at the regional budget, I've advocated for additional police resources to make sure we can have faster response times. And a lot of this is criminal syndicates. We had a major police deployment a number of years ago that focused on catching some of these syndicates that were gang organized, profiting off car thefts. And they managed to break up one. It was actually taking the cars into a warehouse and then by transport to Montreal, then to Turkey, and then sold in China. And there was 100+ cars involved in that one syndicate that the police broke up, and maybe many, many more that we didn't know about. But as soon as you break up one syndicate, there's another one that's forming, and it's why we have to give the police the resources to do their job. I'd also say part of the challenge is we have a little bit of catch and release in the justice system. And it's why I've been leading the charge amongst Canada's big city mayors for bail reform. We actually launched a petition, bailreformnow.ca. And so if you could share that with the audience, bailreformnow.ca. We have a revolving door justice system where you have individuals who get apprehended and then almost immediately get released. And we've had some high profile incidents that's just infuriating for me. We had the case of Henderson Bellman, who was killed by an individual who was released on bail for the 5th time. The Crown Attorney opposed him being released, but he was released by a justice of the peace, and there was a fatality that could have been avoided. Just a few weeks ago, we had a woman who was assaulted in the park. She had the courage to come forward and really talk about the incident. The police did the work. They found the person who was actually doing this to women in a number of our parks in Peel Region. And the next day, the person's released on bail. And so, I want stricter conditions for bail. I want to make sure that dangerous offenders that pierce our sense of safety in our communities remain behind bars, and we don't exhaust and waste the efforts of police.
I just want to bring to the people of Brampton, look at the example in the United States of many cities who purported to defund the police and their escalating crime stats. And when you're talking about bail reform, I look towards San Francisco and California, where the Attorney General doesn't prosecute anybody with under $1,000 worth of crime, and look at what's happening there. You are absolutely within your right. Just one final point. I remember in the 80s that Metropolitan Toronto Police put specific task forces together that were funded on a particular budget to the police to focus in on one particular thing. There were some drugs, there was some prostitution, there were some other points. Is that something that your council may consider, to fund a particular group of a police effort in one particular focus?
Yeah, so policing is funded on a regional level. And so
Right.
The regional counselors and myself obviously contribute to ideas for the police budget, but it ultimately is Chief Nish's choice. But he does have specialized units. And when you see the police budget presentation on a regional level, it really gets into those details. But they have specialized units that focus on areas like human trafficking, domestic violence, gun and gang activity. And these units do great investigative work. And they have some real challenges because just like policing has become more sophisticated, criminal organizations have become more sophisticated. And I have to tell you, some of the stories I've heard about the technology that criminal organizations use, they've upped their game. And it's why we need to make sure that policing is able to match the creativity of criminal organizations.
I spent some time with 42 Division ZIU, the Zone Enforcement Unit, and I can tell you the work that they do it's thankless work, and it's so important for our community. We have a couple of more comments and one more question. Let's do the comment here. Alan Can says, what is happening with David Barrick and that whole situation?
Yeah, so there was allegation that was made. Council takes every allegation seriously. We asked the clerk to pick a third-party investigator to look into it. That way it wasn't council picking a third-party investigator. And we've got great confidence in the neutrality and fairness of our city clerk, Peter Fay, who is a complete gentleman devoted to the city. He selected an international company that's well-respected, Deloitte. They did an investigation and found and determined that the allegations were without merit. We did an extensive investigation for 6 months. Some people say, do you regret spending that money on a third-party investigation? And honestly, I don't. I think we need to
clear the air.
I think we need to, when we hear allegations, take them seriously.
On that point, last week, last end of the month, we asked about Qriket Stadium. He had a decision against him where he was demanded to pay $20,000 to the city of Brampton and $20,000 to the integrity commissioner. We understood at that time he's back in council. Do you have any update with regards to if he's paid his fines?
So that would be before the courts. They're the ones who determine that the payment has been made. It's not for council to enforce, but I believe Councillor Dillon is abiding by the judicial decision. I haven't been informed otherwise by our legal counsel. But
so some people are saying that if he hasn't paid the $20,000 to the city of Brampton, he shouldn't be able to sit in council. Is that a valid comment?
Well, I would say I think the integrity commissioner report has
which he also owes $20,000 to.
Yeah, I try not to get involved in that issue. I think the integrity commissioner report spoke volumes, and and obviously there was a judicial process that followed, and I respect our judicial process. I respect the neutrality of our judicial process,
Yep.
and I think whatever awards were made are fair, and they will be enforced by the court, not by myself or by City
I'm not
Hall.
trying to make I'm not trying to make a mile of a molehill here. It's
Yeah.
just something that has been asked. We have another comment and another question here. Dan 966, a Canadian Premier League on team would be great for the city. Would you? I don't know if you could afford a Premier League team, but you do have the Premier League team within the Canadian Premier League team. Has that been considered? I think the only thing that people in Brampton would have to say is they don't want the city to pay for it.
Yeah, no, I would welcome, any sports teams that were interested in Brampton to come. Yeah, I don't believe in subsidizing professional sports, but I would welcome any professional sports that want to put on a great show for our community. Yeah, it's I think we have a city that loves our sports, that loves our recreation, and I know there's a number of professional organizations that have inquired about the ability to have some activity in Brampton, and it's just interesting that we're starting to see more and more interest in catering to our Brampton market.
Mm-hmm. One last question here. Do you have another one, Faz? There you go. Is there any way to stop underground repair work near 16 John Street until spring? We've been kicked out of the tenant and public parking, walking on the snow and ices, wherever we can find to park our cars will not be good for seniors. Peggy H. Thank you, Peggy, for your question. Yeah, I guess construction is always, it's an unfortunate reality in a city that's expanding and growing. But in that particular case, it does pose a more heightened a problem on John Street. Do you have any comment on that?
So I have to look into that specific property. I don't have it.
16 John Street. So just
before me, but I'll make a note of that, and we'll if you email me at
we'll email it to you. We'll email
patrick.brown@brampton.ca. I will get you a response tomorrow.
Patrick.brown@brampton.ca. One final question. The Toronto Star, God bless the Toronto Star, no thanks. They had an article, or they had a picture, I should say, of Ford, Premier Ford with a chainsaw, and they were referring to the construction of Highway 413. And they were making inference that killing the green zone after all this time that we've spent and all the money that we've spent on looking at studies, etc., and that the 413, some say it's only going to save 20 minutes and it's going to cost so many millions and millions of dollars, while others say we do need another highway route. It doesn't really impact Torontonians. It's more Caledon and Brampton. Any words on that, where you stand, or where council might reflect on that, on the Highway 413?
I mean, it's easy for other communities to say we don't need additional transportation corridors when they already have theirs. You know, imagine Mississauga without the QEW. Imagine, Toronto if they didn't have the 401 or the Allen Expressway or the DVP. I don't see those same individuals saying they don't need transportation corridors in their communities. What I would say is I believe there is a way to build greener, more climate resilient transportation corridors. And maybe the 413 is an opportunity for that. The city of Brampton put forward a proposal that we believe unites industry and environmental concerns at the same time. It's an urban boulevard through the city of Brampton portion. And I have to say, you could have charging stations. It could be really catered to electrified transport. But, we do have a problem. We have a gridlock problem. And so for people that say we don't have a traffic problem, go on the 401 pre-COVID during rush hour. Go on the 410. We have a traffic problem. And there's been extraordinary growth in the north part of Peel region, the north part of Halton region, in Vaughan, and we just haven't seen the investments in transportation. And so I do believe we need to have a transportation corridor. I hope it can be one that is green, clean, utilizing new technology that incorporates the city of Brampton Urban Boulevard proposal, which was endorsed by our council unanimously. And I'm going to continue to push the Urban Boulevard to the provincial government as a way that they could make their 413 plan more consistent with environmental concerns.
As long as we don't create another 407 and have the Spaniards holding us on ransom every time we have a toll, because there's a lot of people that still have a real bad taste in their mouth as a result of that. Rowena Santos chimed in there about the arts. Yeah, the arts in Brampton is very important. We acknowledge that, and thank you, Rowena, for all the good work that you do in that. Updates, 2 questions. University, any updates on the university portfolio?
So a few updates. We've got the University of Guelph-Humber working with the city of Brampton to have a Brampton campus in the Center for Innovation. That's exciting. 5,000 students who will be using our downtown, retailers, restaurants, shops. Algoma is undertaking an expansion once again. They're going to be bringing in an aviation program on top of their business program. So we're going to have pilots being trained in downtown Brampton. Of course, right now, Ryerson and the city of Brampton are working on the proposal for the med school. The provincial government said that they were going to award a med school to Brampton, the first in the GTA in 100 years. And now we're working on the proposal for how it's going to be designed, where it's going to be. And so that's a major academic expansion, prestigious academic expansion into Brampton. I would note the name is changing. It's not going to be Ryerson anymore due to inconsistencies with our reconciliation efforts with Indigenous communities. So I say Ryerson, but it won't be called Ryerson. Thank you, Chris Drew, for referencing that in the comments. Chris Drew, by the way, is an encyclopedia of knowledge. We're lucky to have him interested in our city. And then,
well, this is the beauty of social media, that we can sit here and talk, and that we can do this and
see comments live. But there's one more.
But that's, I mean,
one more big thing, Michael. Before I forget, Brampton University. As much as we're having all this great news in terms of academic expansions, we're still fully committed to wanting to have our own university. We are the only big city in Canada without our own university. And just like I was determined to see a new hospital in Brampton, I am equally determined to see our own university. I want to see a Brampton U. And I think this is a legacy moment for the provincial government, whoever is going to be in power. And I think it's in Premier Ford's self-interest to be the premier that awards a Brampton U. Part of Premier Davis's legacy is that he expanded the post-secondary infrastructure in our province. And I think people still talk about him in glowing terms because of his commitment to education. And I've challenged Premier Ford that this can be his moment to show that example.
Good for you.
and I'm hopeful that he'll come to the table on that. But it's going to happen eventually. And so whether it's Premier Ford or whoever follows, it will happen eventually. There's no way you can have an exception in Canada's big cities as the only big city that doesn't have their own university.
So the Center for Strategic Innovation, any updates on that?
Yeah, council's gone to the design stage. I think they've already selected a firm that's doing that work. So we're proceeding full steam ahead on our Center for Innovation.
And my final comment, the tunnel, putting the Huron-Ontario right to your GO station in Brampton. Everybody's skirting around that. I have a funny feeling it's going to be another municipal election piece yet once again. Do we have any updates on that?
So council voted by a margin of 11-0 that our preferred route would be a tunnel for the heritage aspect of the downtown. It was part of our federal government ask. It's what we're actively speaking to the federal and provincial governments about right now. So I'm convinced we're going to get the funding for the LRT Phase 2. And it actually hasn't been a divisive issue anymore. There was a choice of Main Street or some other alignment, but this compromise position really brought everyone together. So it's not an issue we skirt around or avoid anymore. We have a preferred route. It's adopted by council. We're full steam ahead in a united fashion.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Just a reminder that the Santa Claus Parade virtually will be on November 27th at 5 p.m. Mayor Brown, appreciate your time at the end of every month on the Tuesday. Thank you very much. You can always get in touch with us at citystudio.ca/Ask Brown and post your questions and your comments. We look forward to seeing you at the end of next month at the same time to sit down and have a chat with the Mayor of Brampton. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Thanks very much for tuning in and have a good evening.